Welcome back for today's video, taking a look at two polls that have come out in recent days that are specifically looking at the state of Texas. So what I'm going to do is take a look at the Democratic primary numbers as well as the head-to-head matchups between some of these upper-tier Democratic hopefuls and their battle in a general election against Republican President Donald Trump. Now, Texas is a fascinating state right now because of how competitive things were in 2018. Beto O'Rourke showing that Democrats can be competitive statewide, especially with strong voter turnout. He lost by less than 3 percentage points. Now, Texas historically is one of the lower voter turnout states, and this is just what you get whenever you live in a state that's very heavily partisan leaning to one side, whether it be Democratic or Republican. So Texas generally has very low voter turnout, kind of the same way that we see that out in a state like California, which is very strong consistently for the Democrats. You get that both ways. But the fact that the Democrats were able to show that they could be competitive statewide in the midterms of 2018, it's making things a lot more interesting going into 2020 and likely going to increase that voter turnout. Some of these people that in the past have thought there's no use for them going out and voting for a Democratic candidate has now seen potentially a light at the end of the tunnel with what O'Rourke was able to do in 2018, and that their vote actually means a little bit more. And we're seeing that in the polling data. Things are very competitive, especially in some of these general election matchups against Donald Trump. And Texas is in play. It's a state that has shifting demographics that are playing well for the Democratic Party, and they're going to be trying to flip the state in 2020 in what's likely to be a competitive race. So starting off here, we have a poll here from, let's see here, this one is from the University of Texas at Tyler, and then the other Texas poll is going to be from Emerson. So just taking a look at the Democratic primary numbers, Beto O'Rourke leading the way by a couple of percentage points over Joe Biden. Bernie Sanders in third place at 16%, Elizabeth Warren at 10 percentage points. And Texas is a very important state in the Democratic primaries because it's earlier on in the process. It's a very large population state, so there's a lot of pledged delegates up for grabs, and you have to get to that 15 percentage point threshold to be part of the candidates that divvy up those pledged delegates. So that's an important number to be above. In this case, there's 3 candidates above that 15 percentage point threshold, which is Bernie Sanders, Joe Biden, and Beto O'Rourke. Now, scrolling down and taking a look at the head-to-head matchups here against Donald Trump. But before doing that, also, I think it's kind of interesting that they asked, do you believe Beto O'Rourke should run against John Cornyn? And a little over around 70 percentage points of the people that answered in this poll think that he should run against John Cornyn. So that's still good news for Beto O'Rourke, that a lot of Texans want him to run in the Senate after he had so much success back in 2018. And they're not turned off by the fact that he decided to go and run for the presidency and get that Democratic nomination instead of just solely focusing on this Democratic Senate primary and then head-to-head matchup against incumbent Republican John Cornyn. But then beyond that, these general election numbers, very interesting. So Joe Biden, a 4 percentage point lead over Donald Trump. And going down, Elizabeth Warren down by about 1.5 percentage points. Kamala Harris losing by about 3 percentage points. And then Bernie Sanders doing the best out of all the Democratic candidates here, up by about 4.5 percentage points over Donald Trump, kind of similar to what we were seeing with Joe Biden, where he was up by 4 percentage points. Pete Buttigieg not doing so hot down in the state of Texas, losing by over 6 percentage points. And then we have Bernie Sanders, the best out of all the candidates that aren't Beto O'Rourke. And you would expect Beto O'Rourke to be one of the more competitive candidates, certainly against Donald Trump, given the fact that he's from the state of Texas and he's pretty well known throughout the state, winning by over 5 percentage points over Donald Trump. Now, in an actual head-to-head scenario with these candidates against Donald Trump, I'd be surprised if they were able to win by these kind of numbers, but I certainly wouldn't be surprised to see it very close and competitive within a couple percentage points one way or the other. So going over and taking a look at that Emerson poll, and first taking a look at the primary, Joe Biden leading the way in this one by a pretty healthy margin, around 8 or so percentage points above Beto O'Rourke, who's in second place at 19%. Bernie Sanders a little bit below 16 percentage points, which was similar to what we saw from him in the prior poll. And then Elizabeth Warren a little bit below 14 percentage points. And scrolling down, Taking a look at the general election head-to-head matchups, so Biden and Sanders doing the best in this one, each leading Trump by 2 percentage points. O'Rourke, somewhat surprisingly, losing to Trump by 4 percentage points in this one. And this is just something that you have to keep in mind when you're doing these state-specific polls and you don't have huge sample sizes. You can get a little bit of fluctuation one way or the other. So O'Rourke losing to Trump by 4 points in this one, but in the prior poll, he was ahead by around 5 percentage points. Not completely out of the realm of possibility, again, given the sample sizes that we're getting in these polls. And if you're interested in looking at all the data from these two polls that I'm covering in today's video, I'll have them linked down in the video description. But then looking at the other matchups, Pete Buttigieg losing by 4 percentage points, Warren losing by 4 percentage points, Castro down by 6 points, and Harris down by 8 percentage points. So the data overall for the Democrats is positive in their head-to-head matchups with their frontrunner. So Biden and Sanders, they're pretty consistently 1 and 2 in the Democratic primary polls, and they are doing the best, or some of the best results here in the head-to-head matchup against Trump in the state of Texas. And I think it would be fascinating if one of these candidates were able to go on and win the Democratic primary, get that nomination, and see what would happen in a head-to-head general election matchup against Trump in a state like Texas that's been so consistently Republican for such a long time. But now the Democrats finally feeling like they can be competitive in statewide elections, and that's likely to boost that voter turnout and making things even more compelling. So thanks, guys, for stopping by for this video. If you want more of this type of content in the future, click that subscribe button, and I hope to see you guys back here for my next video.